Hello, welcome to the Midlife Momentum podcast. I have a fresh new episode with you for you today with a special guest. I have Liz Benditt on the podcast today. She's a senior marketing executive with over 25 years of professional experience. And after enduring 5 different cancers over the past 14 years, she leveraged her experience as both a marketer and a cancer patient to launch the bombbox.com. It's a site featuring functional self-care and gift packages for cancer patients. So thanks, Liz, and I'm so great. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And just want to start by your story. How did you start out and how did your story lead you to creating the Balm Box?
Oh gosh. It's right, it's a little bit of everything, right? So I grew up in Southern California. We moved around a lot as a kid. I went to undergrad at Boston University and got my undergraduate degree in broadcast film communications. I spent a couple years working at Disney, and decided I did not want to be a TV director after all, and switched gears and decided to get my MBA with a focus on marketing. Have worked at a huge variety of brands and businesses that I won't go into detail. You've heard of most of them. Um, so I had this really unique background where I know how to tell a story, right? It's what I learned in undergrad. How do you tell a story? What's your beginning, middle, and end? And in grad school, I learned much more tactically, how do you capitalize on that story? How do you make it profitable? And so after doing that for a whole lot of different businesses and brands, you put that together with my personal experience. I had this itch to do my own thing. Um, and it all culminated, like many people, right, over the pandemic, right? So over that career where I've worked as an marketing executive at a huge variety of businesses and brands, I also experienced a lot of cancer. And it's so weird. Everyone asks, like, so I'll start with, I have no genetic predisposition to have any cancer whatsoever. And I've done genetic testing twice, and I've done like what they call the Cadillac, like the big one with like 200 genes. Like basically the genes that have mapped to known cancers, I don't have, which means that they just needed you more mapping. um, I did not live under a radio tower growing up. I did eat a whole lot of snack wheels and tabs, drink a lot of tab. I'm totally a child of the 80s and 90s. So maybe that's it. Maybe we'll find that there was some kind of like horrible ingredient in all of those snack wheels cookies. I don't know. But whatever the case is, there's not a lot of reason to it. And so in 2009, I was reasonably, newly married, and I had little babies at home. And that was my first cancer. I had melanoma, and it was really scary. It was melanoma is one of those cancers where they tell you, oh, if it's spread, you have like less than a year to live. And if it hasn't spread, no big deal, wear more sunscreen. So that's those are their choices. There's nothing in the middle, right? Like it was really, really terrifying. But luckily for me, it was caught early enough. It had not spread. I became obsessed with sunscreen and swim shorts, swaddling my children in like just head to toe neoprene, which my now 18-year-old daughter absolutely rejects, and I cannot force. So, I did as long as I could. But yeah, so I had a lot of, the skin cancer was very scary. You kind of like shake it off, go back to life. And then 11 months later, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. 3 years after that, I had another skin cancer. 2 years after that, I had my first breast cancer. 3 years after that, I had my second breast cancer. So, it's on the one hand, I'm very grateful that they didn't all happen at the same time. That would be overwhelming. Um, right. And also, I have the benefit, I think, of hindsight now. So as I've gotten diagnosed with incremental cancers, the first time you hear the word cancer, you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. My children are going to be motherless. Like, you just kind of go through like all the bad stuff. And by the time I got to the fifth one, it was more like, ugh, this sucks. This is going to suck. This is going to be a tough year, but it'll be fine. right? So I
Wow.
think that there's a little, you learn. And I think the other thing that I learned through that whole process, and I think we had a longer conversation about this, is learning how to advocate for myself.
Hmm.
That there are infinite numbers of, there's all sorts of ways that all of these cancers give you, and the treatments in particular, right? It's not the cancer, it's the treatments that give you all these, lovely side effects. And learning to work with doctors that will include me in the treatment plan as opposed to dictate a treatment plan to me has been, for me, revolutionary. So one of the biggest aha moments I had through all of this is that you don't get extra points for suffering, right? Like you don't get cured faster because, you don't do anything with your radiation burns. Like you can help yourself, right? There are things that will help make it less terrible. So that was kind of one great big learning through this whole process was, oh, I need to advocate for myself and make sure that I'm working with doctors who I agree with when it comes to the various risk benefit of various treatment options. And the second is, there's lots of palliative stuff out there that helps, that makes
Hmm.
this stuff more um, tolerable. And it doesn't have to always be a prescription, right? Like ice packs that don't leak through your clothes were revolutionary, right? Like it's just really simple stuff that made such a difference for me in my treatment. And I thought, so those were some of the things swirling in my head as we ran into the pandemic in 2020. And I had this thought like, why are people sending cancer care packages filled with a lot of what I would call inspirational stuff, right? And especially when you have breast cancer, you just get a lot of pink stuff, right? So pink
Hmm.
breast warrior t-shirts, my tatas tried to kill me tote bags, and pink coffee mugs, and like all of these things that are so well meaning and honestly pretty expensive, but in the moment when I was in the middle of going through this stuff, kind of not awesome to receive. While concurrently I'm out there looking for lotion for my radiation burns, and a lip balm that's unscented, and like all of these things that I know will be genuinely uh, palliative, right? Like helpful. And I had this thought, why can't gifting be functional? And so as a 20 plus year marketing executive, my first thought was, well, maybe I'm just an asshole. Like maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm the one that doesn't like all this stuff, and I got to make sure that other cancer patients agree with me, right? That they want functional things as opposed to inspirational things. And so I wrote a survey. It was super long. It went down two paths. So one path was, if you'd previously had cancer, I asked you about your cancer experience and asked you to rate on a scale of 1 to 5, like up to 50 different items of things that you would like to buy or receive for yourself. And then if you hadn't had cancer, I asked a bunch of questions about, okay, well, did you buy a gift? How much did you spend? Who'd you buy it for? All that good stuff. And this is one of those things, like, I know it's a no-no in marketing. Like this survey took probably 40 minutes to answer, but it was the pandemic and everyone was at home and bored. And they were super happy to have something to do. And so I sent it to absolutely everybody in my inbox. And I mean, people I haven't talked to in 10 years. And then I asked them in the email, hey, could you answer the survey? And could you also share it? And it went viral, and it collected over 500 responses, which was amazing. And I got such amazing validation from that survey. So when you ask cancer patients, what are some items that you would like to receive when you're going through treatments? They were all what I would call functional. The top performing items were things like lip balm, lotion, fleece blankets, ice packs, right? Things that got the worst scores across the board, things that nobody wanted, got ones, were kicking cancer tote bags, kicking cancer coffee mugs, worry stones, inspirational poetry. And so when you ask cancer buyers, right, caregivers, it's kind of the category I call that, what are you buying? It's mostly flowers and food. So here's this huge disconnect between what people want and need and what they're actually getting. And I thought, oh, that's a business. And so I wrote a business plan, and by October of 2020, we launched it.
Oh my gosh. There's a lot in what you just said. I mean, you packed it all into
Yes, I
to that
tried.
5 rounds of cancer and
Yeah,
advocating for yourself, which I think is amazing. And I'd love to go into that as well, because
for
I think that's
sure.
something
Yeah.
all women should be able to do or should feel like they can do. is advocate for themselves, and then taking and going from there, and then creating this gift that obviously is so needed. I mean, you got 500 responses on that survey that you
With
sent
no
out, which is
incentive, with not even like a chance to win $100 or anything. Just, hey, could you
no,
answer my survey? It was amazing. Yeah,
amazing. That is amazing. And obviously it's a clear, we see it clearly that people who are going through cancer would like to receive things that are much more practical, things that they can actually use.
yes,
And
yes,
so therefore the Balm Box was born. But there's so many things in there. Um, and I'd love to know, like, if we back up to the advocating for yourself, because I think
sure.
that probably, I imagine that gave you a new sense of self-confidence, perhaps. I don't know, like, or did the self-confidence come before you started doing that? How did you manage that? The
Such a good
advocating for
question.
yourself.
It's, it was an evolution, right? So if I go back to my thyroid cancer, I had a really hard time. Um, I just getting I had a lot of complications. I was struggling with clinical fatigue, and I was gaining a ton of weight because I was so tired and not exercising and eating badly and all these things, they're all connected.
Mhm.
And so I complained to my endocrinologist at the time, I'm just so tired. Something is wrong. I wasn't even this tired when my children weren't sleeping through the night. Like, something is wrong with me. And he just blew me off and he said, you're a working mom. Working moms are always tired. And I thought to myself, you're not hearing me, right? Like, this is wrong. And so I went down this path of saying, well, I need to find a new endocrinologist. And I did my homework, found a new endocrinologist, got on a different medicine also. But the catch was, to get into a new endocrinologist's office, it took a year because I was just on a wait list, because there just are only so many. And I live in a pretty major metro. So I can only imagine how much harder this would be for women that live in more rural areas. Like, I live in the suburbs of Kansas City. It's a top 25 market. It's big. So we have a national cancer center here. Like, it just took a really long time to get into the good endocrinologists, the ones that people, recommended.
Mhm.
And that would but so that year I ended up going to see this, I call her like the crunchy doctor. Like, she ran a med spa and she was a little quirky and wore Crocs, and I don't know, she was odd. But she had an MD, and she looked at all of my labs and said, "Have you tried dropping gluten?" And um lo and behold, within 3 weeks of dropping gluten, I felt enormously better. I felt like I woke up. I was able to start running again. I got my life back. So then by the time I got to the endocrinologist, the issue wasn't the weight gain and the fatigue, but it was still something was off. And he adjusted my meds and I got healthy again. And really, in that 15-month period, I went from being overweight, frustrated, exhausted, to running a half marathon. Like, I just
Wow.
it was a huge transformation, and it takes a lot of effort and energy to train for a half marathon. So I think all of that was, it was taking control, right? So I think that one of the things I hear a lot about from cancer caregivers and cancer patients in my job now, at the Balm Box, is how helpless people feel, right?
Mhm.
They feel like they've been diagnosed with something and it's terrible and they're helpless to do anything about it. And I do think that, like, as a as a certified control freak, taking some control, like, kind of owning the fact that that doctor wasn't a good fit for me, that I needed to do something else, trying to find alternatives, looking at combinations of homeopathic and like traditional pharmaceutical solutions, being open to both, was for me like eye-opening. And I think the other piece of this that I preach on the regular is that medicine is just not black and white. There is a huge amount of subjectivity in treatment plans, and there's choices to be made, and there are, depending on how aggressive, there, every choice has is going to have like a plus and minus, and it really ultimately comes down to your risk tolerance. And having doctors that are willing to have that conversation as opposed to those that have a really strong point of view over their particular risk tolerance and pushing that onto you, right? Those are two
Mhm.
very different protocols. And there are some people that don't want to make a choice and they want to be told what to do. And I totally respect that. I understand just wanting to give up that control, but that wasn't right for me. For me, I needed to be in my personality in my youth, for sure. I was more comfortable being, I've learned that I did not want a medical dictator, right? I wanted a collaborator. And um, we have choices, we have agency. And so I do, but I think that, again, it was a combination of all of those things that got me to that aha moment. I don't think I had like a moment where like the angels sang and the heavens opened and I thought, oh, I am in control, some control here. It was more, I think, my personality of saying, this isn't right. I can take some control here. This person isn't hearing me. I need to find a different solution because this is not, I refuse to accept this as my new normal. I
Yeah.
don't know. Did that answer?
Yeah, no, it's a great answer because you really listened to yourself and you really trusted yourself to know. And I think that was an important aspect of this because for
Yeah,
sure it's a
yeah.
very fearful situation. Like you said, you hear the word cancer, all of a sudden you're like, I don't know, like I'm sure it's terrifying. And then you feel like the person in front of you, the doctor in front of you knows best. And so sometimes you just be like, okay, you just tell me what to do. But you've been through it a couple times now, so at some point, you must, you're suffering all these other effects. There's something wrong. You know your body. You're obviously very connected to your body to be able to say, there's something wrong here. And it's not just what you're telling me. It's not just being a busy mom. It's something else. And you actually did something about it. And I think that's really important. I think that's something that a lot of us women need to do more of, is to connect with our
Yeah,
bodies. It's not the
yeah.
outside world who can tell you everything about who you are, what's going on in your body. You are the one who should have agency over your body and be able to advocate for that.
I will tell you also, it's really interesting. They're different. My daughter and I talk about this all the time. My daughter is an athlete. She plays volleyball and she also has just found yoga and she has found this. She talks a lot about mind body connection. And we talk about these things together, and yoga for her, it's so for someone that has been playing volleyball at an elite level for, however many years, 5 years. And you'd think as that would give her that mind body connection, but for her, yoga is what has helped her enormously in terms of helps her feel good, helps her feel connected to her body, understanding when she needs to rest, understanding when she needs to move. And for me, it has been running. Like I have a running group. It's also my therapy because I get to run with girlfriends, and and we've been running for 10 years together, so that's a whole amazing support system. But for me, that run has helped me also be connected to my body so that then when things aren't going right, I know, right? So I
Hmm.
think that, again, all these things work together. I'm lucky that I had started running before I was diagnosed with cancer. And so the running gave me that head start, if that makes sense, in terms of being connected to, I know what I can do and I should still be able to do it. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a runner too. I've been a runner. I can't run at the moment, but I have been a runner. Same thing as you, started a group of very supportive people. I don't know if the running community just happens to be very supportive, but it's great to have these people around you. But definitely, yes, running really puts you in touch. If you really get into your bubble with it, it is meditative. It is, you
Yeah.
notice your breathing, you notice your body, it's like yoga. And I think like similar to your daughter, it took yoga for me as well to connect with my body. I found that it was yoga that helped me the most too, because they are guiding you to focus on both, to focus on your breath, to focus on your body, and just to connect everything together, the
And
mind
to
and
be
body.
fair, my daughter keeps dragging me to yoga and I don't super love it and I don't have that same. So for whatever, like just so your listeners hear, like you just have to find your thing, right? It
Yes.
doesn't, it could be swimming, it can be tennis, it can be whatever. It can be walking your dog. I'm just saying that I think because I had some sense of my own physicality before I got sick, that gave me a lot of agency or resources, if that makes sense, in terms of
Hmm.
getting better.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that you were already had that connection, so you were able to know when things were off. And I
Yes.
think that's important for most, well, for all of us women, I think so.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you've had to deal with a lot of things, I know, and so it led you to creating the Balm Box, but you've, in the meantime as well, you've left a corporate job. You've
Yeah.
had to, and you've been through all this and you decided to leave your job and launch this new business. So all of that too is, I imagine, quite stressful. I imagine, like, as you're going through another cancer diagnosis, you're also doing this, right? It's a
Yes.
lot. How did you do
It is
that?
a lot. It is I don't know. On the one hand, it's a lot, and the other, it's like it's super freeing. I should start with I'm unbelievably lucky. I have a husband who has a really good corporate job with health insurance, right? So all of our health insurance for the past 15 years have come from him. So me leaving my job, it doesn't have as big of an effect, right, on our overall family income and well-being, right, as if he were to leave his job, and
Mhm.
his understanding and support, right? So I've cut my income in half, and he has been fully supportive, and that affects him too. It's our joint money. So I'll start with we had a conversation about my desire to be an entrepreneur, and we planned for it. So in 2018, I had this idea. We started saving, so that the idea was that by the time the kids, we could be without childcare and take that, we had a part-time nanny that would run the kids to all their after school activities and whatnot. So if we could get rid of that expense and the kids could drive themselves places, then that income, for example, is not lost, right? It's just it kind of makes it a little bit of a net neutral. And then if I could work part-time somewhere, then that gets us to a place where between savings and childcare and part-time work, we could cobble it together and I could launch a business. And so we started talking about this in 2018. We started saving money to create runway so that, it wouldn't be just cold turkey. And then it was amazing. In January of 2020, I was out of the blue, I was offered this opportunity to teach part-time at University of Kansas School of Business, teaching marketing classes, which was the perfect part-time job. So I was able to take that on before the pandemic hit, which was
Wow.
3 months later.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. And so, I've continued to teach, and I still teach part-time at University of Kansas School of Business, and, they're amazing. So, um, I I didn't just do it cold turkey, right? It took a lot of thought and planning. Um, and I did it at a time when my kids could be more self-sufficient. So I did wait for quite a few moons to align, right, in order to make this transition work. Um, and that's made all the difference. I know it's really interesting. I talked to other entrepreneurs, and there's really kind of two schools of thought. One school of thought is you have to quit your job and just go in all in and don't have a fallback, because that, like, fear is what's going to power you. And then there's the other school of thought that says, it, most businesses, you need a lot of, like, test and learn before you can scale, and having another source of income provides runway and opportunity. And I liked that idea a whole lot better, and I've followed that one. And that's the one that I think has, at least for me, worked really well. So I have some source of income, through teaching, certainly not as much as I made as an executive. We'll put that out there. But it also is much more flexible hours, um, and then it's given me the time to continue to manipulate the business. And I will tell you, the product line and website look nothing like they did 3 years ago, because I've had that time to test and learn. Right. And so there were, product lines that just straight up failed. And so I've gotten rid of those. So, just continuing to test and learn. And in entrepreneurship, they call it product market fit. And it took me about 2.5 years to get to that product market fit where I saw, okay, I have the right combination of product, price and ad campaign that's going to generate the right conversions, now I can put more money into it. And now we're scaling. And
Wow.
so that's, yeah. So for me, having that runway and having a part-time job has been instrumental in my business's success, and then also my mental calm, right? Like I have a source of income. It's not nothing.
Yes.
So that's also helped. So planning, right? That also is part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said. There are two schools of thought. I did the other one. I just left it all and just like go full force because that'll push me, right? And it was hard.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was probably,
Yeah.
I look at the way you did it and you're smiling and you look so calm. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that probably would have been a better idea, but that's my mindset was nope, you've got to make a clean cut and just go for it. So
And
yes,
that's what I'm saying. Either there's not a
but
right
both can work
answer.
out. Both
Yeah.
can work out,
Yeah.
obviously. So it's worked out for you. It's worked out for me. Different experiences, but all good.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And yeah, so you've done this. So this and the Balm Box, maybe you can tell me a little bit about what that is now. Like
Yeah.
what's
I will tell
exactly
you
in
where,
a Balm Box.
yeah. So when I started, I had this idea that it would be a subscription box, right? Where if you're going through radiation or chemo or even surgery, that you would sign up for yourself a subscription, and then you would get like weekly or bi-monthly boxes. You could manipulate how often you wanted to get them, of stuff to help you through your recovery. And as an afterthought, I thought, oh, well, I'll also throw in gifts so that because we've already kind of curated these boxes, maybe people just want to buy one box as a gift. And on my like business plan, my first business plan, I thought, okay, 80% of sales are going to be self-purchase and 20% will be gifts. And after the first year, it was completely the opposite. 80% of sales were one-off single gifts and 20% were subscriptions. So ultimately, the subscription product we ditched, got rid of it, and then focused entirely on gifts. And then within gifts, we continued to test and learn. And so I started off with like what I consider side effect specific boxes, right? So here's the nausea box or the neuropathy box or the chemo brain box or the radiation skin care box, right? And at the end of the day, the aha learning for me was as a gift buyer. And then we also had the generic, if you're not really sure, here's the cancer care box or here's, the chemo box with a little bit of everything. And and the generic boxes sold so much better than the side effect specific boxes, which in retrospect makes sense, right? If you're
Mm.
a caregiver, and especially a caregiver that doesn't live close by, you don't really know exactly what side effects people are experiencing, and you don't really want to make that judgment call. You just want to provide something that's palliative. And so we cleaned all of those side effect specific boxes and just created, here's the cancer care box, the small, medium, and large, or what we call essentials, comprehensive, or tremendous. Here's the mastectomy box, the essentials, comprehensive, tremendous, so on and so forth. And so you can go in and buy a box that is going to have a little bit of everything for someone going through that particular surgery or treatment. And that has made all the difference. And so the items are all functional, So the two items that I'm most excited about are our pillow products. We design our own, and again, I'll start with, we started manufacturing them. I had this idea. I went to a local seamstress. She was making like 25 a month for me. And over the time, we've grown so large that I had to move to an actual manufacturing facility and take the business away from this wonderful seamstress who honestly was more than happy. She hems pants and does other things too. But these are these really great seat belt cushions. And so
Oh
things that
yeah.
like you don't really consider when you're going through radiation or or any kind of breast surgery, whether it's lumpectomy or mastectomy, or even if you're having chemo and have a chemo port, your upper torso is super, super tender and you don't think about it, but that seat belt is really uncomfortable, and actually can be painful. And so I love this like just really clever seatbelt shield that has little scallops in it so that you don't even have to attach it to the seatbelt. It just kind of, the seatbelt tension holds it in place. And it's so clever and so comforting. And we make lots and lots of them. And you can also buy them on CVS.com, which is very exciting. And then these side pillows. So this is another really cool product that is a scalloped shaped pillow that fits under your arm. So it looks like a little horseshoe. And when, again, things that you don't think about when you're going through radiation or having a mastectomy, the weight of your arm can really bother and agitate your side. And so I love this pillow because it lifts your arm off of your body and it makes it so that it's not bugging you. And especially when you're sleeping, it just kind of it just forces your arms away from your body so that you can get comfortable. Because getting comfortable when you're going through all these things is the key, and it's really, really hard. So I love these pillow products. I think that we're talking to a couple other retailers about putting them in stores. Like that's another area of growth for us. So and you can find them in a whole variety of our different boxes. And then we also partner with a local small business, woman owned, of course, called Polish Your Parts, which is such a great, name for a business.
Polish your parts. Yeah.
And she does all these wonderful organic and paraben free and, all natural lotions and oils. And she makes our cuticle oil and she makes our lotions and she makes our lip balms, and they're amazing. So it's like a little bit of everything. We manufacture some things, we source from some other manufacturers, but we put it all together and curate these boxes that are filled with like really awesome, high quality, useful items.
Okay. Wow. That sounds amazing. It sounds like exactly what you would want to get. You want the comfort, you want to feel good, because I'm sure going through cancer does not feel good.
No,
So you need
no.
everything you can, and you are a bit of an expert, unfortunately, about
Yes.
that. But amazing that and you've created these pillows yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible, which I love that. And I'm a bit of a sewer, so I really
Oh,
appreciate
really?
that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's wonderful that you've been able
Well,
to
you
come up
think
with
it's
those
what's
products.
really fun is the manufacturer that we work with um, has the same machine that stuffs our pillows that they use at Build-A-Bear Workshop. I don't know if you've ever been to one of
Oh
those.
yes, yes.
So our stuffing is the same as the Build-A-Bears. It's very squishy.
Oh, very nice.
Funny, right?
Yeah, it's very cool. And yeah, and then that could be lead to its own business on its own right there. Just the
For
combination of
sure.
Build-A-Bear and these cushions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
I guess children's products. Yeah, that's low on my list.
Uh, so I just want to ask, what have you like, and this is quite a journey. I mean, through cancer, through, leaving a job, through midlife and all of this as well, because you're
Yes.
also pretty much the same age as I am. And so you're right in this midlife time, and you've created this business. So what have you learned? What would you say are the big things you've learned about yourself as you've gone through these challenges, and maybe even the other people around you?
Um, I I mean, I've learned a ton, right? So one of the things that I've learned, um, it's this really interesting combination of being a small business owner. You have all of a sudden there's no one in accounting to ask, how to file your various expense reports, and and I have to be the one to change the ink in the printer, and right, I mean all those things. So I've learned a lot more self-sufficiency, and I do love that flexibility of being able to in a day focus on everything from marketing to finance to operations. And at the same time, I've also, as a result of being sick, right, in the middle of all of this, um, scaling and launching, I've also learned how to delegate. And
Mm.
not learned, I mean, I've always delegated. I've had staff and given them assignments. But I probably was more of a micromanager than in reality I thought, because especially when you're sick, you have to just let go. Like I'm just not going to be there. I can't oversee things. I just have to trust other people to do that. I've trained them and they're going to do it right and it'll be fine. And guess what? It is, like the world continues to turn shockingly while I, watch Netflix and sleep. So it's both of those things, if that makes sense. Those were kind of my big learnings.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Definitely. That's and yeah, it's just incredible what you've been through and that, you have learned to delegate. I think that is a huge learning. I think it's a learning most of us need to have in everyday life. It's one thing to do it at the office maybe when there's a clear, hierarchy and this is what you're doing, but it's another thing to do that with the people in your own home and trying to delegate tasks that, especially when you're the mom and you're used to doing everything, you had to delegate. You had to have the family help you out when you were going through all of this. So I think,
For sure. And I
yeah.
think, and I love that, um, I think that my kids have learned a lot more self-sufficiency as a result of it. In fact, I think about my daughter is 18 and applying to college, and she even wrote a whole essay about, learning when to step in and make pancakes for dinner because everyone was distraught. Like, it was such a beautifully articulated example of, hey, I learned that sometimes moms need to be taken care of and that's okay. And I don't know that I learned that at 18. My mom still was doing my laundry when I was until I went to college. So, I like to think, I hope that that would be one of the benefits, right? Is that it forced me to let go. Um,
Hmm.
in a way, and luckily, again, I've been really lucky that I let go at a time when my children were of an age where that was appropriate, right? They were in high school. It's very, very different when if I go back to my first cancer and my children were 1 and 3, that's a much different they're not making pancakes for dinner, but they
Yes.
were wonderful in their own ways, right? Like, they're when the weekend that we were waiting for the pathology results to come back from my melanoma, um, uh, surgery, that we were going to find out, surgery was on Friday, we're going to find out Monday whether or not it had spread. And that whole weekend, like, those little babies were little need machines, and they were very distracting and wonderful to just, sometimes just sitting down and reading Bernstein Bears and just giving baths and making hot dogs, like all of that was wonderful also. So I think that in some ways, like, I've embraced the parts of parenting that have worked well for me during my different stages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it does. It
Yeah.
makes sense. And I do love that idea too of, your children are old enough now and have been for the last few years to be able to take on some responsibility and that we don't need to go through cancer to have that happen, right?
No, 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 please don't.
No, no, no. And I think it's a great learning because sometimes we don't let go until we have to. Like and I've been through a divorce where I had to let go part of the time. But in that, the gift is that the kids learn a whole new set of skills. They learn how to
Yes,
take care of
yes.
themselves in other ways. And so there's always that gift inside all of these things, but we wish we could do this without having to have that reason to do it. You
Yeah, I
can,
mean, you don't wanna have to go through trauma to learn these things, but, again, it's if you ask me what I've learned, right, that's one of those things that I feel like
yeah.
I've learned, like delegation. And then I should be clear, it's also delegating not just, things inside the house, but delegating inside my small business, right? So giving part-time workers, hourly workers more responsibility because ultimately, at the end of the day, stuff had to get done and I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
So, and they loved it and loved having that responsibility and were really gave them a sense of like agency and pride. And I thought, oh, I don't need to actually be sick to enjoy the benefits of, this person growing as an employee. I should do that in and of itself as a leader, as a manager, as a mentor, right? So those are some things that I think also you try to look on the positive side. What are the things that are
Mhm.
the positives, and those are some for sure some of the positives.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so important. I think yeah, you had to go through this. You learned those things, but now you get to take them forward with you
Yeah,
and keep
yeah,
doing them. Yeah.
absolutely.
That's great. So I really loved having you on the podcast, but before you go, I always ask my guests, what is the best part for you of getting older?
Oh, well, I have 2 answers. One is my little brother got married a lot later, so he started his family a little older, so his children are really little. They're 3 and 1, or almost 4 and 1, and, they travel with a stroller and 8 pounds of crap wherever they go, and every time I see them, I'm like, "Ha ha, I'm really glad that I don't have a stroller anymore." Like, I do not miss traveling with small children. That I you know, that really was horrible. So one benefit of midlife is my children are self-sufficient. I super, super love that. When I say pack for a week at the beach, I do not need to check that, shorts and bathing suits have been packed. Um, so there's that. And then I think, the other is the broader, like, what I like to say, give a shit factor, right? Like, as you get older, at least for me, as I've gotten older, it's so much freedom that comes with not caring what people think, and genuinely, like, certainly in my 20s, I used to say that I didn't care, but I did, right? And so now I think 25 years later, I definitely don't care. Like, I genuinely have found, marching to the beat of my own drummer and hearing my own, you know, authentic self, right? All of those kind of smooshy things I found to be really true. And I very much enjoy not having the pressure of having that peer pressure, or allowing that peer pressure to affect me. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I have a question. Do you think you'd be there if you hadn't been through the cancers that you've been
Oh
through?
gosh, what a great question. Maybe not. Maybe not. Like, I talk a lot about how grateful I am to my cancers in some ways. Like, it's been this really big litmus test for my marriage. So, I think there are a lot of marriages that in these kinds of scenarios they just break. And
Mhm.
it's so understandable. And so no shade, right, on anyone whose marriage has fallen apart as a result of this trauma. And I've just been so grateful that mine's been strengthened, right? So it's a and having that's a gift of sorts, right?
Mhm.
And like we've talked all about, the children learning to be more self-sufficient and make scrambled eggs and pancakes for dinner and doing their own laundry, and recognizing that mom is human and breakable, right? Those are all things that I think are good and I'm grateful for. I think are positive. So I don't know, like,
Yeah.
I can't say for sure I would end up in the same place without it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of it has brought you here, I think,
Sure.
probably that, give a shit factor is probably maybe you don't give a shit even more now because of what
Yeah.
you've been through, and not just your age. I'm sure that's part of it because I feel it in myself too, but I do wonder if it's also all the experiences that you've been through too. I'm sure that bolsters that kind of feeling of like, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to
Yes,
do.
life is short, right? And
Yeah.
precarious, and going to work with horrible humans, and or going to work with mind-numbingly boring work, and I've done both, and I won't name them. I just don't have time for that anymore. I don't have the energy for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So I've learned, and it wasn't me that had cancer, but my mother. And I think that really turned the switch for me too, was like, you know
Yeah,
what? I only live once and I don't have the time to do the things that I really don't want to do. And
absolutely.
yeah, so I really do think I hate that it takes negative experiences for those things to come out, but I think that's life. We do have to go through the negative to really see the positive. We have to have that contrast,
For
and
sure.
it's going to
For
be
sure.
part
And
of
I've
it.
had, and I have had I had a unique upbringing that my I'm firstborn American on my parents' side. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. They met in
Mm,
hiding in Poland in World War II.
wow.
And their story is a story for another day. But my grandmother went through, I mean, I can't begin to say how much she went through. Her first husband and son were killed in the camps. She lost 5 sisters, all of their families. Like, she was the sole survivor because she looked like me, because she looked very Aryan and could escape. She um, could have spent her entire and my grandfather lost quite a bit as well, right? They came to America, they remade themselves, and did. very wealthy and did incredible things. But I will tell you, my grandfather was bitter. He was mad at the world until the day he died. And my grandmother was grateful. My grandmother was just charmed. She was full of joy. And I do think to a certain extent happiness is a choice, right? And that was such a like vivid, I mean, growing up with these two very different humans, right, in my life that faced the exact same horrific experience, and to come through it so differently, like I do think that, you know, choosing joy is is an option. So I like to think that my grandmother taught me
Yes, you're clearly a reflection of your grandmother.
that.
Clearly.
What a
What a
great
gift.
compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And yeah, and that's a great lesson, that we should all learn as we get older. Choose joy. Choose joy. You can always choose it.
For sure.
So, Liz, if any of the women in my audience right now want to get in touch with you or want to learn more about you, how can they do that?
Absolutely. We're on all the socials. We're on Facebook, and it's all a little different because our welcome to naming your business. So on Facebook, it's bomb at Balm Box. On Instagram, it's Balm Box IG. We're on LinkedIn, www.thebombbox.com. Just Google the Balm Box, you'll find us.
The Balm Box. That's BALM Balm Box. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Good. All right. So I'm going to include all that information in the show notes
Please
so
do.
people can
Thank you.
just click on the links and if you do want to order anything from Liz, it'll be right there. You'll be able to do that fairly easily. So thank you so much, Liz, for being on the podcast. I think what you have to share obviously is super valuable. I think a lot of people will get something really good out of this, even if it's just to choose joy. I think
I certainly
that
hope
would
so.
be
And
so
what I
good.
tell people is I certainly hope you never need to buy a cancer care package. But if you do, that's what I'm happy that we're here for you. And that's what I try to say. And I
I love
genuinely
that.
feel.
I love that. Oh, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Liz. Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll stay in touch soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Debbie.